Hey everyone, and welcome back to our channel. When you hear Trojan War, what comes to mind? A giant wooden horse, the face that launched 1,000 ships. Brad Pitt in a leather skirt. For centuries, the tale of Troy, a grand 10-year war fought over the beautiful Helen, has been one of the greatest stories ever told. It's a saga of gods, heroes, love, and betrayal, immortalized by the ancient Greek poet Homer in his epic, the Iliad. But here's the big question: how much of it is actually true? Did this legendary war really happen, or is it just a fantastic myth? Today, we're going to peel back the layers of legend and archaeology to uncover the truth about the Trojan War. Let's start with the story we all know. It begins at a wedding where Eris, the goddess of discord, throws a golden apple inscribed for the fairest. Three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, all claim it. They ask a mortal, Paris, a prince of Troy, to judge. Each offers him a bribe. Aphrodite promises him the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, who unfortunately is already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta. Paris gives the apple to Aphrodite, sails to Sparta, and, depending on which version you read, either abducts or elopes with Helen. Menelaus is, understandably, furious. He calls upon his brother, Agamemnon, the powerful king of Mycenae, to help him get his wife back. They rally a massive army of Greek heroes, including the nearly invincible Achilles and the clever Odysseus. They sail across the Aegean Sea to the mighty city of Troy, demanding Helen's return. When the Trojans refuse, a brutal 10-year siege begins. The Iliad focuses on just a few weeks in the final year of this war, highlighting the rage of Achilles and his feud with Agamemnon. The epic ends with the funeral of the great Trojan hero, Hector, but not with the end of the war itself. The most famous part of the story, the Trojan horse, isn't even in the Iliad. We hear about it later in Virgil's Aeneid and other sources. The Greeks, unable to breach Troy's massive walls, pretend to give up and sail away, leaving behind a giant wooden horse as a supposed offering to the gods. The Trojans, celebrating their victory, pull the horse into their city, but as we all know, it was a trap. Greek soldiers hidden inside sneak out at night, open the city gates, and let the rest of the army in. Troy is sacked, burned to the ground, and the war is finally over. It's a fantastic story, but for a very long time, that's all it was, a story. Most historians believed Troy was a mythical place, like Atlantis or El Dorado. That is, until a controversial and passionate amateur archaeologist named Heinrich Schliemann came along in the 19th century. Schliemann was a wealthy German businessman who had been obsessed with Homer's epics since he was a child. He was utterly convinced that Troy was real, and he was determined to find it. Following the geographical clues in the Iliad, Schliemann began excavating a mound in modern-day Turkey called Hisarlik. And what he found was staggering. He didn't just find one city. He found multiple layers of cities built on top of each other over thousands of years. It was an archaeological jackpot. Schliemann, in his excitement, dug a massive trench right through the center of the mound, unfortunately destroying valuable evidence in the process. He eventually declared that he had found the Troy of Homer. He even unearthed a spectacular hoard of gold and jewels, which he dramatically named Priam's treasure after the legendary king of Troy. The problem was, Schliemann got the layer wrong. The treasure he found was from a city now known as Troy II, which existed about 1,000 years before the traditional date of the Trojan War. Around 1250 BCE, his methods were crude, but his discovery was revolutionary. He proved that a major, fortified city had existed right where Homer said it would. He had found Troy, but had he found the Trojan War? Later, more careful archaeologists like Wilhelm Dürpfeld and Karl Blegen continued Schliemann's work. They identified 9 main layers of settlement at Hisarlik, spanning from the Bronze Age to the Roman era. They focused on 2 layers in particular, Troy VI and Troy Via. Troy VI was a magnificent city. It had huge, sloping limestone walls, towering fortifications, and grand houses. It looked exactly like the strong-walled Troy Homer described. For a while, this seemed to be the perfect candidate. There's just one problem. Evidence suggests Troy VI was destroyed around 1275 BCE, not by an invading army, but by a massive earthquake. The walls show signs of seismic damage, not of a military siege. So, what about the next layer up, Troyvia? This city was built right on top of the ruins of Troy VI. It was different. The houses were smaller, more crowded, and people had even started living inside the citadel walls. Large storage jars were sunk into the floors of houses, suggesting the inhabitants were preparing for a long siege, stockpiling food and water. And most importantly, Troyvia shows clear evidence of destruction by fire and warfare. Archaeologists have found arrowheads, skeletons, and widespread burn layers dating to around 1180 BCE. This date is a little later than the traditional date for the war, but it fits the archaeological picture of a city under attack, a city that was violently destroyed. So, we have a real city, Troy, that was destroyed by war around the right time. But what about the other side, the Greeks, or the Achaeans, as Homer called them? Well, this period in Greece is known as the Mycenaean civilization. They were a powerful, wealthy, and warlike people. Their centers, like Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, were heavily fortified citadels ruled by powerful kings. They were sea traders and raiders. Cuneiform tablets from the contemporary Hittite Empire, a major power in the region, speak of a troublesome kingdom to the west called Ahiawa. Many scholars believe Ahiawa is the Hittite word for the Achaeans, the Homeric Greeks. These Hittite records mention conflicts and diplomatic incidents involving Ahiawa over a place called Wailusa. And linguists have pointed out that Wailusa is strikingly similar to W. Ilias, an early Greek name for Troy. Some of these texts even mention a king of Wailusa named Alexandru, which sounds a lot like Alexandros, another name for the Trojan prince Paris. This isn't a smoking gun, but it's powerful circumstantial evidence. It tells us that a Greek-like kingdom was clashing with a city in northwest Anatolia that sounded a lot like Troy, right around the time the Trojan War was supposed to have happened. So, let's put it all together. Did a 10-year war happen exactly as Homer described, with demigods and divine interventions? Probably not. The epic poems were oral traditions, passed down for hundreds of years before being written down. Stories get bigger, better, and more dramatic with each telling. The love story of Helen and Paris was likely a poetic invention to give the conflict a romantic and personal cause. The Trojan horse was almost certainly a metaphor. Some scholars think it could represent an earthquake that damaged the walls. The god Poseidon was the god of both horses and earthquakes. Others suggest it could have been a new type of siege engine that the Trojans had never seen before, which looked something like a horse. But at its core, the Trojan War was likely a real event, or more likely, a series of conflicts. The most plausible theory is that it was a trade war or a series of raiding expeditions. Troy's strategic location at the entrance to the Dardanelles Strait meant it controlled access to the rich trade routes of the Black Sea. The expanding Mycenaean Greeks would have seen Troy as a major rival, a bottleneck on their economic ambitions. A war to break Troy's control over this vital waterway makes a lot of economic and political sense. So, the truth about the Trojan War is a fascinating blend of history and myth. It wasn't about a beautiful queen, but it was likely a real clash of Bronze Age superpowers. It was a conflict remembered and embellished over centuries, evolving from a historical memory of raids and trade disputes into one of the most enduring and epic tales in human history. The story Homer tells us might not be literal history, but it captures the spirit of a real, violent, and transformative moment in the ancient world. What do you think? Do you believe the war was a historical fact, or is it pure poetry? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the past, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history and myth. See you next time!